All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. Um, and then that way we can get started, and anybody that can join us can join us. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and jump in. I know it's the night before the holiday, and a whole lot of people said, yeah, I'll do it, and probably forgot, got busy, are busy cooking, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll just go ahead and get started. The link for this recording is probably going to be sent out on Monday because I'm realizing that everybody will be out of the office for the next 3 days. So once this finishes the recording for me, I'll get it sent over. And then anybody who joined for, or who's getting the link for the webinar is also going to get, I'm putting together just a little YouTube playlist for you guys, just with stuff that's going to go further into detail about the topics we're talking about tonight. So we're going to go through body language, but today is going to be more of a discussion, more of a description, and then there's going to be some body language videos if you want to dig deeper into those. And then I've got a little collection of some of my favorite sort of cat training type videos to send your way as well, because cats do not get enough credit for how smart they are. We need to remember that they are both prey and predator, so there are a whole lot of similarities to larger predators, but then we don't always give them the credit that's due to understand that they are prey in a whole lot of situations. So we're going to talk about different kind of body language, the different ways that they communicate, and we're going to talk about some of the basics when it comes to managing, interacting, and training and teaching with cats. So my name is Alyssa. I'm the lead trainer here at Napa Humane. My specialty species is dogs, but for anybody who works with animals in general, and is training animals in general, the biggest thing to understand is that all animals learn the same. So the same principles apply when we're training with cats and dogs and squirrels and chipmunks and crows and pigeons, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the most amazing training displays come actually from watching zookeepers interact with their trainers. While dog trainers get a whole lot of hands-on dog training, a big proportion or a big reasoning for that is that we take our dogs out in public. So they need to be able to perform and behave in certain ways to help keep us safe. Less often do we train our cats, less often do we train our birds, less often do we train our pigs. Whereas zookeepers are going to be doing a lot of training, especially for animals that they can't handle physically. And that might be because they are in what's called protected contact, where they have all of their interactions through a barrier to keep them safe and to keep the animals safe. And it may also be because this is not an animal that is comfortable being handled and touched physically. And it's not healthy for us to just always go into sedate the animal to continue on. So when I send some of those videos, you will notice that there will be some cat training videos, and then I'm going to sneak in some other species videos, because it can be really interesting and I think a very eye-opening concept when we look at things outside of what does it look like when we train a dog to do that in the normal way that we've seen people do steps 1, 2, and 3, and how do we envision teaching another animal that? Why do we spend a lot of time doing medical care with heavy physical restraints for both cats and dogs when there are ways that we can do it that can be less stressful and less dangerous for both the human species and whatever animal species we are handling? So we're going to talk a little bit about videos, or talk about a little bit about training and things like that. And you'll see videos again later if you want to go through those. So while my specialty is dogs, I have been a certified trainer since 2016. And part of my tenure as a trainer was spent in shelters, working with both dogs and cats. You will see some videos where the background may look familiar. And some of those videos are from my time at what was previously ARF in Walnut Creek, which is now Joybound Pets. So you may recognize some of their lovely cat condos in some of the videos. So I want to give them a little credit for having a very cool behavior program during COVID where the folks weren't coming in and out, but we had some really dedicated volunteers and things. Napa County also has some really great dedicated volunteers in their shelter that work with their cats, but I haven't been able to get in and get some videos yet. So you won't see that, but that's not to say that there isn't quality to be taken there. All right. So when we are talking about body language, we want to watch the whole body. We're going to be, and if you watched my dog body language webinar, we talked about same things, watching the eyes, watching the mouth, watching the ears, the tail, the body posture, and then what is the context of this situation. So this little kitten, Enzo, I've had the pleasure of interacting with since he was about 3 or 4 weeks old. And to point out just some things here, his tail is up high, those ears are up high. You can see how large his pupils are. His mouth is closed tight and his whiskers are puffed outwards. And then his body weight is stretched forward as well. Just admit this person, there we go. So when we are looking at the body, it's not just what were the eyes doing, what were the ears doing, it's all of those pieces. And you won't always have all of those different pieces to see, but we want to see as much as possible rather than just, I saw a tail flick or I saw the ears press. We want to look at more things because sometimes we're going to see these things when the animal is stressed or aroused. And what I want you to remember is stress and arousal are a nervous system response. That is not necessarily the emotion. Stress is not always good. It's not always bad, right? So there is going to be more context needed. If we took a snapshot of a cat playing, that might look like that cat is afraid. This photo of Enzo, actually, he just finished eating, and Enzo was a very good eater as a young kitten. And this is him getting the opportunity to come out, and he's likely trying to see if there's more food for him because he's just been in there shoveling up his food in his feeding residence. So in this particular situation, the context of where he is important. You also wouldn't know from this little snapshot that he is in a soft-sided crate that is on a elevated platform, and he also has access to a potty box. So he has a potty box, he's got room to move around, and he's got access to his food in there. And this is not a space where he spends all of his time. This is a space he gets separated to eat so that we can monitor what he and his foster siblings at the time were all getting for their meals. And that's mostly because Enzo was not good at sharing. He was a very opportunistic feeder. So context in this situation matters, right? If I didn't know the context, I might go, wow, his pupils are really blown. I wonder if there's fear. I wonder if he's getting ready to swat, and that's why his leg is lifted. So I can give you the picture, but without added information. Sometimes we're just making, educated guesses. All right. One of the resources that I suggest in many of my discussions and talks with folks is using the resources that were created by Fear Free Happy Homes. Fear Free is a nonprofit organization that does education for both pet owners, pet care providers, and medical staff, as well as shelter staff. So they have put together some really great things. They use the terminology of an FAS, which is the fear, anxiety, and stress. And they have some scaling to look at for both cats and for dogs. So looking at this very simplified infographic, you can see things like when the eyes are saying the animal is stressed, the pupils should look normal. They should look like slits. When the animal is relaxed. When the animal is stressed, we're going to see dilated pupils. Again, nervous system response, just like us. His ears may be forward, or if they're stressed and upset, they're going to be out to the side and pressed back. When I teach the kids in the local classrooms about being safe around dogs and cats, we jokingly call it angry ears. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean the cat is angry, but we need kids to understand that if the ears aren't in normal position, anything other than that is an agitated cat, right? So that's why we call them angry ears. The spine, when the dog is nice and relaxed, we're going to see, or the cat is nice and relaxed, we're going to see a more relaxed spine. when a cat is really agitated, we're going to see that arched spine, that rainbow spine, that Halloween cat posture, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to see that back arched and pulled back. When we're talking about tails, we're going to be looking at, is the tail, when they say top line, that just means along the spine. So the cat's tail being up, we're going to see a nice curve, sort of almost looks like a question mark, if you will. And we should see a nice swish versus a cat that's tail is tucked or in tight around the body, or if it's vibrating or if it's thumping. Okay, so those things are all important. A relaxed cat usually has his mouth closed, which is different from dogs, where we tend to see the mouth open quite often. With cats, when that mouth is open, are they panting? Are they hissing? Are they growling? Are they spitting? Is it a Fleming's response, which is when they're trying to suck in as much information as they can? Those different things we're going to be looking at. So I love these drawings by Lily Chin. If you're interested in having a really convenient sort of guidebook, Lily Chin is a illustrator who had a challenging dog of her own, Boogie, who you'll see in a lot of her drawings. And she started educating herself on body language and behavior, and then the animal world caught hold of how wonderful of an illustrator she is, and she started making all of these things. So she's got 2 books out. She's got Doggy Drawings and Doggy Drawings is the company. She's got a kitty language and a doggy language. They're little small, books. I love them for the coffee table. They're great. It's mostly all infographics, but this infographic came from her. So when our cats are showing their belly, they are showing us the most sensitive part of their body. Exposing that belly, exposing that neck, they're not going to do unless they feel incredibly comfortable and relaxed in our presence. Remember, prey and predator, okay? If I'm worried about being injured, I'm not going to expose my belly. Versus when a dog will expose their belly, it's either them in a full starfish, here's my neck, tongue hanging out, rub me, or their body's in tight and their posture is, please don't hurt me. When a cat does it, if the cat feels uncomfortable, they are not rolling over onto their back. So they're only going to do that when they feel safe and secure. But it's not a request to be touched. Many of us have a cat who will allow or tolerate us to rub them on the belly, and they have that little squishy belly that is nice to mess with, but they're not all going to enjoy that. Most of the time they're not going to, and most of the time the reflex is going to be claws out and swipe at you for touching the belly. So the belly being shown should make you feel very honored, but is not an invitation for touching. Okay. Friendly and relaxed cats are going to have those nice squinty eyes. They're going to do nice soft blinking. So you can see in almost all of the pictures that we're looking at, except for the conflicted and cautious cat on the top and the anxious cat on the bottom, we have those nice almond shaped eyes. Okay. So we want to be looking for that nice calm blinking. The cats that are showing that they're nice and content are typically going to roll over onto their side or be kind of relaxed rather than being curled up really, really tight. So we will often see that scratching and that scent rubbing, because they have scent glands here that they're rubbing on to say, I like this person, this thing, this place, and I need it to stink like me, so that other cats know that this is the place that I hang out in. Right. So we're going to see those behaviors, the marking, and we may see the scratching as a, oh, I'm excited. And so we may see those behaviors. We often will also see them come up and sort of rub their head on us when they are feeling, so maybe the top of their head as well as the side of their head. When we're seeing conflicted and anxious cats, we're going to see those rotating ears, those satellite ears, radar ears, whatever colloquial term you'd like to use for them, but we're going to see those ears moving kind of side to side, back and forth. Versus the anxious cat is going to have the starting to flatten out ears, and those ears may move quite quickly. Another thing to think about when we are seeing predatory behavior this is similar for most species, but we definitely see it very obviously in cats and dogs. When they are in the hunt, they are not going to be doing a whole bunch of extra movements. It's going to be very efficient movements. And so with our cats, we're going to see that flat spine. We're going to see that with dogs as well, and the silent approach. I'm not going to be loud on my approach. I don't want to tell my prey I'm coming. And that is something that you may see, that posture you may see with a cat that's actually trying to play, with another cat or with a toy or with an item. So that predatory stance doesn't always mean something negative. It doesn't always mean they're going to, try to attack a bird or something of the sort, but we are going to see that lowered body posture. They're going to be in that crouch sort of Scooby-Doo position, except that back is going to be nice and flat. The tail is usually hanging off rather than the tail being up high, which might be, out of the bushes and let somebody know they're coming. We're probably going to see those ears up and forward. The mouth is going to be closed nice and tight, and then those nails are going to be retracted because we want little kitty soft paws rather than click, 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 click as we're moving around. Okay. A cat that is really agitated is often, when we talk about fight, flight, freeze, fidget, with cats, we don't tend to see a lot of obvious fidget behaviors besides things like pacing and vocalizing. But we do tend to see a lot of that freeze and flight, right? So a cat is going to get as small as possible, as quiet as possible, and hope that the predator, the scary thing, whatever it is, goes away. If they don't feel like they can, it's often going to look like a progression of that top level. The worried cat that's crouched, the frightened cat that's crouched further with their ears down, and the pupils are going to start to blow, and that tail is in nice and tight. And then if I feel stuck, those ears are going back, my head is going back, and I'm going to show you my teeth. And you will know that hiss because they're going to show you all of the really important things that they need. And you may also be getting spit at. You may also be getting growled at beforehand. And a lot of people forget that cats growl, but it is a nice, you can feel it in your bones, kind of a growl when they do it. And then that hiss that everybody knows is theirs. For our fearful cats that are thinking about, do I need to stand my ground or can I get out of here? You may see what you're seeing in those bottom two photos on the left, which is that rainbow arched cat. I need to get as big as I can get, and then I'm going to puff up. And you can see when I go from I'm scared, but I'm trying to keep it small, to nope, I got to get as big as I can. Tail is up. I'm puffed as I can. And you're probably the cat that's tail down. You're probably going to be getting that growling, that deep mewing with the ears flattened. And then once I'm ready to actually take action, I am hissing and spitting at you with my tail puffed up as big as I can get so that you don't come over here, that you are threatened enough that you go away. We tend to see them moving back and forth between the meowing and the hissing before we see the swatting when we're having inter-cat interactions as well. So that's that. You better get off my lawn. You better get out of here. Don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. I'll hit you, right? And that kind of progression as they go up. The photo of the irritated cat with the three tails. I want to explain that one. So cats will tend to thump their tail when they're really irritated. And it's very similar to how we will thump our foot and tap, 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 arms crossed, angry glaring eyes, or we're tapping on the counter. And it is a warning sign to whatever or whomever is annoying us or stressing us out. That is, I need you to back off, chill out, knock it off. Right. This is the same as when a dog is growling at us. It does not mean approach me. It does not mean keep doing what you're doing. It is, you're going to find out if you keep at it. Okay. And a cat that's disgusted or feeling uncomfortable may show you their teeth while they kind of pull back. That one you're going to very rarely see. All right, so when we're talking about ear carriage and a little bit more in depth, again, if they're forward, are they curious? Are they excited? Are they aroused at what it is? But more than anything, we want to be really aware of those flattened ears. So the two cats on the right, we've got the gray and white guy on the fence post there. We've got sort of radar ears going on. But if we look at the rest of his body, he's kind of crouched. The cat to the right of him, ears are out to the side and flattened. We'll see another picture of Coco later. Coco is a very conflicted kitty. And you may notice that her body posture, she's slightly raising one paw there. And this is a cat that has approached me for attention and then is giving me the, why are you so close to me and don't make me swat you, right? So those ears are completely sideways and flattening as you're looking at those. For tail carriage, there's a whole bunch more terminology here. That big curved, kind of up curved tail, you can see it really nicely in the orange kitty on the bottom. That again, that half a heart or a question mark, whatever you want to call it, that is a relaxed greeting, comfortable cat. We want to see that. The high twitching tail that we can see sort of in the black cats on either end of this, those high arousal tails are sometimes vibrating because they're starting to be overstimulated, or they're fake marking. So if they were going to spray some scent, they would have that tail up high. Or if they are not marking, but they're that aroused, they may flash their tail as well. But it is typically a over aroused cat that is going to be doing that with that tail high and twitching. We talked about the thumping cat photo, and then the tail base fluff. What we're looking for when we see that is the cat on the bottom right. See, at the base of his tail is up, and then his tail goes out. Rather than going straight up, it goes up and then kind of down, or up and then over. That sort of base is what we're watching for. So the more overstimulated, the more aroused, that higher that base of the tail is going to get. And it will often puff out as they're starting to get overstimulated. So you may be petting a cat and you can see them start to bring that tail up. And if we're seeing that base of the tail being up and elevated or puffed out with the fur, they probably need us to give them a break. That's the cat that goes, pet me, pet me, pet me. Why are you petting me, right? And that's that overstimulation response that we often see. So puffing their tail out is when they're trying to get their tail as big as possible. A nice relaxed tail would be the picture of that little Siamese on the bottom left. The tail isn't curved tight against the body. It's just sort of draped right next to them. And that's what we want to see. So we're looking at how their tail is moving as well. So there's an orange cat on the top center, and he has a sort of fluffy tail anyways. That is not a puffed tail for that cat. That's his neutral, right? So one of the things we want to keep in mind is that based on the length of their hair, there may be normal puffy and there may be extra puffy. And sometimes it can be hard to know for sure when it's not a cat that you have a relationship with. Versus, again, Coco, the sort of Cordy Siamese mix, she, you can see, is swatting that tail when she goes to turn around. And again, she's got those big old dramatic ears. All right, so body posture. So are they hiding? Are they laying on their side? Are they exposing their belly? You can see with the orange tabbies on the bottom left, you've got one that is relaxed and rubbing in on the pole, and you've got the other that's in the back corner, not only laying down, but pressed into the wall, right? So the two of them are giving sort of dramatically different body posture. The top left cat, you've got laying on the side, you've got nice squinty eyes. You can see him sort of, we call it making muffins, right? That sort of claw exposing and pulling back, versus the cat on the right who's hiding behind her cat tree, right? And you can look at the pupil difference in those two top photos of the relaxed cat with the normal pupils and the hiding cat with huge pupils, right? Her pupils are almost full circles on the top right. So we really want to see that sort of laying on their side, like the cat on the top left, who's, funnily enough, his name is Couch, which I tell everyone because I think it's a fantastic name. And then the black cat on the bottom right, we've got that nice relaxing. Now the black cat on the bottom right, he's starting to twitch his ears a little bit, but he's not worried enough that he's going to get up and move, right? He could either drop and expose his belly, or he could stay in that sort of relaxed, comfortable posture. And relax is probably a strong word, right? Because I can't decide for him what his emotion is in that moment, but he is holding what we would call sort of a neutral posture. All right, we've talked a bit about eyes as we've been going through. So looking at things like, are they soft and almond shaped? Are they squinty? Are they doing slow blinking? Are they glaring? Are they giving us a sort of a hard stare? So the cat on the top left, we can see how his head's kind of pulled back and his eyes are his head's kind of tipped down. That might be something we consider more of a harder stare, more of like a glare. And then the kitty cat on the top right, that's Pearl. We're going to watch a video of her later. That is a great example of blown pupils. Now, Pearl was the cat in the last photo that I pointed out the pupils. Her pupils were almost always blown, versus the two cats on the bottom right, where we can see a little bit more of a natural pupil. And then the cat on the left, who's sort of hiding in a closet, we can see larger pupils on that cat, but we're not seeing other indicators of high stress from that cat. The ears are forward. Yes, it's in a closet, but that may be less about hiding and more about that is that cat's preferred space to sort of feel secure in. All right, the mouth. The mouth does all kinds of stuff. And you see I had to sneak in a picture of a not a domesticated cat because sometimes they just give better images. So their mouth being closed, maybe a little bit more normal. But again, we're looking for other things. So is their mouth open because they're yawning? The cat in the middle is doing a big old yawn, top middle. The cat on the top left, that cat is hissing. Okay, so we've got that flattened posture. We've got those ears flat. We've got the whisker bed is all puffy out to the sides. So that is a cat that is hissing, and you can see that furrow in the nose that's different than the middle photo of the cat. Okay. The cat on the bottom right, that is a cat that's panting, and it is not a normal thing to see a panting cat, but that is a excessively stressed cat. So when we're dealing with cats in medical situations, if we're seeing panting, we are concerned about that. They will pant when they're hot, but it is a pretty obvious stress signal. The kitty on the left, the big giant kitty on the left, formerly known as a tiger, is doing a Fleming's response. So the Fleming's response is when they're going to be pulling back that top lip, and they're going to be sort of huffing. And they will often do it when they're smelling something. So they're kind of blowing the air up so they can get in a good smell. They can get in as much sense as they can in that space. The cat on the right side is grooming. Okay, so grooming is something that we want to be looking at. If a cat is feeling really stressed, they may not feel comfortable enough to groom. This is a cat laying on his side, licking at the paw. That is a fairly content position for a cat to be in. If I was worried about being approached or worried about a threat coming at me, I wouldn't be laying on my side. Even though cats have great reflexes, eating on the side or laying on the side when feeling threatened is not usually a position they would choose to put themselves in. And then are they eating or not eating? Obviously, that's not about mouth position, but that is good information, right? Are they willing to sit there and lick a lick mat? Are they willing to sit there and eat a treat? If they're not, that might be a good indicator of stress. All right, so this is another infographic put together by both Fear Free Happy Homes and Fear Free Shelters, which are two sister organizations. And then the illustrations are done by Lily Chin. Again, she just gives really great things. So when we're looking at sort of the spectrum, we're looking at green, yellow, red, and I like to call that FAS5, that top scale. To me, that's like purple, right? That is all hands on deck. We got to stop right now. When we're seeing green with cats, we're going to be seeing sort of mild, subtle signals. Okay, so they describe this as avoiding eye contact, turning the head away without moving away, just sort of turning their head away. Their pupils may be starting to dilate, but they should not be big. Okay, they should be well within normal for the lighting in the space that they're in. So this is going to be a more neutral tail. Or more neutral cat. We may see just the tip of it flicking a little bit, but we shouldn't see that thumping behavior. Okay. So this might be curiosity. This might be excitement. This might seem to look like what a cat might portray when they're about to play, those kinds of things. As we go up in that scale, we're going to see a cat that does less. Cat that starts to get smaller, starting to get a little bit more worried. We may see those ears start to twitch side to side. We may see those eyes start to pupils start to blow a little bit more. We may see a little bit faster breathing, but you're probably only going to notice that if you're watching the rib cage. It is harder to tell in cats. They're just not as obvious about huffing and puffing as other species sometimes are. Typically, those whiskers are going to be pulled back and kind of flattened against their face instead of puffed out like they'll get as they're getting more offensive in their behavior, but you're probably going to get some crouching or some leaning away from you. And you may also get moving away from you in that state. And then in that higher state, that first level of red, they're trying to get out. This is a flight or freeze position, right? This is, I got to get away, or I'm going to get stuck in place. Something that they call tonic immobility would be really looking like a cat that is shut down. I call it battery save mode. It is get down, get as quiet as possible, move as little as possible, get into the smallest position that you can possibly get into. And that is going to be that. Let me just hope that it goes away. And then as they get more stressed, we're going to see the actual aggression. So you can see how cats don't always start with the aggression, they'll sort of stop once they have to get aggressive, whether they're being offensive or defensive. You can see some differences there, but regardless, we're getting aggression, and nobody aggresses when they're having a good old time. Okay, so that is something that we want to just immediately note for them, is that this is a state of stress that whenever we can avoid, we should. Okay, so that might look like asking for exceptions when your cat goes to the vet, asking for special things like, hey, can you just call me when they're ready and I'll bring them in from the parking lot rather than having them sit and wait in the lobby. Maybe they get a bigger carrier or a smaller carrier, or they go in through the back, or you have a vet that comes to your home. And when you have multiple cats, sometimes that is a better option than taking each individual cat to the vet. It can be less stressful. All right, so these are more obvious breakdowns. Again, this is from Fear Free Shelters, of their 4Fs, and I'm using a lot of their already put together stuff because it is just well put together, and I think it's really easy visually for most of us to see. As you're looking at this, I highly recommend that you pay extra attention to those fret and fidget Fs, because those are things that we often don't notice. We don't notice that they're excessively sniffing an area. We don't notice that they're excessively scanning an area. We don't notice that their eyes are really wide, that they're acting restless, that they're pacing a lot, that they're shaking their body off. Those sort of behaviors we tend to miss. Okay, and those can be indicators that the stress level is rising. And then we often will see more flight from our cats. So those ones are pretty obvious, where the cat is going to try to get out of a situation. Freeze, again, this is to pet professionals, the freeze is fairly obvious because there's all of a sudden a lack of behavior. And for any species that you're looking at, a lack of behavior should be a big old red flag. If they went from I'm behaving, I'm doing things, to all of a sudden there's no behavior happening, that is a big old red sign, because that animal is not communicating. And when you're not communicating, you're preparing to take action. And often we see the frozen in place as relaxed or tolerant or comfortable. And that is often not the case. And this is where things look to folks as if they came out of nowhere. And that is because there was a lot of communication and then there wasn't any communication. And that lack of communication, or lack of obvious communication, is the red flag that we should be looking for. And that's sometimes where we need to step in and advocate for our animals and go, oh, we got to stop for a second. Oh, my cat needs a break. Those kinds of individual things. And you may notice that if you're trimming your cat's nails at home, that you get through one foot and you're fine, and you get to the second foot and you're getting that freezing in place, you're getting that lack of squirming, but you're also getting pupils blown and they're staring at you. That is not, oh, he relaxed and he's letting me do it. That is, this cat is taking notes, right? And good luck catching it next time, because I don't want to do it. So noticing when your cat needs a break, when they are fidgeting and when they're freezing, rather than pushing them up to that flight and fight stage. Okay. Flight or fight is pretty easy to see and hear when it comes to cats. You're going to be getting the low growling. You're going to be getting the hissing. You're going to be getting the swatting. You're going to be getting the claws are out and they're trying to get any traction that they can. And you're going to get a lunge and a swat, and then they're going to pull back to try to get away, rather than immediately going in for a bite. But biting is technically in that level. All right. One of the most common things that we deal with is litter box issues. And so we want to talk about looking at the differences of litter boxes. So just those 4 pictures I put up are multiple different ones. There is really great infographics and handouts made by a company called Chirrups and Chatter. Tabitha Kucera is later in my recommendations, but I really enjoy the way that her handout is more about the ABCs of litter. So how accessible is that litter box to my cat? What's the size of that litter box to my cat? And not just how big is it in comparison to my cat, but how wide is it? How deep is it? How tall is it? All of those things are really important. And then how clean is it? We have some cats that are like, I peed in it twice, it's dirty, and you're going, I was at work for 8 hours. I can't have it clean constantly. And for those cats, we might be talking about the type of litter box being something like a auto cleaning litter box. For a cat that is really fearful of sounds and doesn't like a lot of change, a robot litter box is going to be really, really scary and may not be functional. You've got the top entry litter boxes, like the one on that top left, so they can feel like it's enclosed, but they have to jump up and into it. So as a cat starts to age, they really may not like that as a litter option. I also think that if you have a tall dog at home, that it is a perfect bowl for them to just put their little head in. So since my other specialty is dogs, I want to mention that is not my best or not my favorite one for a multi-species household. The cat boxes with the top on them can be nice for trapping in the litter when our cats are kicking that stuff around and trying to cover things up. But if you've got a wider cat or a cat that's really nervous about entering small spaces, that is not going to be a litter box that they go in and out of very often. The litter boxes that look more like a coffee table or a bureau with a door on it that they can go inside of. Again, if you've got a cat that doesn't like doing all that extra work or doesn't feel safe and content and comfortable in a small space, that's not going to be for them. So sometimes you need to trial out not only a couple of different kinds of litter, but a couple of different kinds of boxes. And one thing that is often recommended is not using a marketed litter box, but instead taking a plastic storage tote and cutting a large door in it so that the cat has a nice entrance they can go straight into, but it's got nice high sides and it has a top on it, and it's real easy to just open that top and get in there and clean it. It seems every year there's some new sort of litter that's coming out or multiple kinds of litter coming out. The most commonly preferred litter from cats is going to be stuff that's more like sand rather than gravel that is harder that they're going to have to step on. A lot of cats don't like that. It gets stuck in their toes. Those pieces get stuck in their toes and then they track them around the house. So something that is clumping when they utilize it and something that is more like a clay or like a sand rather than big old pieces, and something that is unscented is more often what the cats want. Now, we humans often want something that's scented. We want that lavender or that whatever, but where is your cat peeing when they're outside, or if they're an outside cat? They're peeing in sandboxes, they're peeing in dirt, they're peeing in areas that are fine granules, and they're not peeing on top of your lavender bushes. Often they're digging a little hole next to the bushes and in different areas. They're not often using your bark wood chips out front. So big, large things that they have to kind of move around on often is not something that is comfortable for them. So trial out a couple of different kinds of litter. If you're not sure what kind of litter and you're trying to decide, is it the location of the litter box or is it the type of litter? Sometimes what I'll suggest doing is put different litter in a different box. And you may have a cat that goes, I like to pee in this litter box and I like to poop in that litter box. So they all have their preferences. It is recommended that you have 2 litter boxes if you've got, so at least one litter box per cat, so that they are able to spread out in rather than all 3 cats are using one litter box. You're very much more likely to have peeing and pooping in other spaces that are less appropriate and less preferred. So definitely want at least 1 litter box per cat. In some households, you need an extra litter box. Some households, you've got 2 cats and 3 boxes or 4 boxes. It's going to depend on your specific cat and your specific situation. Accessibility of the litter box isn't only how easy is it for my cat to get in and out, but how easy is it for my cat to get to it. If my cat has to go from their favorite sleepy spot upstairs, downstairs, out through the dog door into the garage to go eliminate, you may not have a cat that wants to do all that effort. Or a cat that goes, I don't like the dog door. I don't like how I have to push up against it. Those things can sometimes stress out a cat. And then the location of that litter box is really important. Not just how accessible is it, but how safe and secure does my cat feel when they're using that space? Again, prey and predator. You don't want to crouch. Most of us don't like going to the bathroom in the forest unless we really have to. And if you do, you're not always all that relaxed, right? You're going to be looking around, what's going on, who's coming from possibly where. So our cat is also going to be worried about where they're going. They don't want the litter box in the middle of the living room. They don't want it in this high traffic area of the house. They're going to want it in a nice, quiet, secure place that they can move and go out to. If you're changing litter for whatever reason, you probably need to do a slower transition. So instead of just, we're out of this litter, boom, we've got a new litter, that is often where a cat goes, whoa, that's not where I go to the bathroom. So switching that new litter into the old litter to help them adjust to it is something that's going to be important as well. So there are a lot of variables to look at when we're having litter box issues and potty issues in the house. And sometimes it takes us a little while to figure those things out. If you're dealing with litter box issues, I strongly recommend taking notes. In the same way that we recommend taking notes if you've got potty issues with any other species. When, where are they going? What variable did we change? So litter box upstairs, litter box downstairs. I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that. You're also going to need to be really on top of the cleaning when you're doing it, or when you're tracking things so that you can really get that information. If you're only cleaning out the litter box every 3 or 4 days, it's going to be harder for you to tell what frequency they're using individual litter boxes, because it might be, I used number 1 until it was full, went to number 2 until it was full, and then I went to number 3 on the litter boxes. So it wasn't necessarily location of boxes, but how clean they were, right? So if that's the case and you're somebody who works a lot, you may need an extra litter box just to help you stay on top of things. Okay. All right, so enrichment. Enrichment is something we're going to talk about with cats before we dig into how do we modify some of our behavior challenges. We're going to talk about enrichment because it is something that we don't talk about enough with our animals. But any animal that we are keeping housed is technically a captive animal. So if we're going to be keeping our animals captive, we want to make sure that their experience when they're living with us is filled with all the things they need to be their proper species and be what they need. So we aren't just feeding it when we're talking about enrichment. We're talking about, and we're not just providing activity. It is so much more than that. I think a lot of folks have indoor-outdoor cats because by allowing our cats to be outdoor, they sort of fulfill their own enrichment needs. But we can't always ethically keep our cats outside because it is not the most safe thing for our cats, and it is not the most safe thing for the animals in our space. I'm not going to take a professional stance and say indoor or outdoor and that's it, and you can't make any decisions. I think every household has the right to make those decisions, but you want to make sure that you're making the ethical and safe decision for your family and your cat, and understand that there are risks about having cats outside. Right. In the same way, there are risks about me taking my dog to a hiking trail and letting them play in a stream or a pond. I'm exposing them to more risky things. So we want to keep in mind that there are dangers to having our cats off leash and out of our control, and especially in suburban, urban areas. Okay. But when we're talking about enrichment, we need to be talking about ways that we can provide our animals opportunities to just be a cat. And it is important to note that animals that are not receiving enrichment or not having their needs met tend to be less resilient, less optimistic, more likely to perform destructive or unwanted behaviors, and are more likely to self-harm. And this is not just for cats in general. This is research that was performed mostly in zoos. When we started to realize these animals aren't eating, they aren't breeding, they are self-harming and self-injuring, they are destroying the insides of their enclosures. And the zoo world sort of went through a renaissance. It was chain link fences, windows, and cement, right? It was what can we clean the easiest so that we are providing them clean spaces. But those clean spaces didn't provide any sort of natural outlet. So we were getting animals that were scratching at corners and bars and edges of their kennels and their enclosures. And it wasn't just about get me out of here. It was these sort of repetitive pattern behaviors. One of the things we tend to see with our captive pets, our pets are things like over grooming, right? So excessive licking, excessive chewing, those kinds of grooming behaviors and over grooming behaviors would be something considered to be self-harming. And if, apparently I misspelled that. So it's not self-harm, it's self-harming. When we are talking about optimism and resiliency, we're talking about willingness to continue trying something, right? If I'm not a very optimistic animal, I might try something once and then go, oh, harumph, I can't do it, right? So we're not going to be necessarily seeing cats try new things or be as willing to play. And when we're talking about enrichment categories, we want to talk about things like environmental enrichment. We'll break these down individually. Social enrichment, sensory enrichment, physical or tactile is something that we're going to talk about. Also, tactile can be, to me, I put it in both the physical and the sensory categories, but it is technically a sensory thing. Cognitive, so working their brains, and then nutritional enrichment. So variability in these things is something that we really want to make sure we get. If we think about human enrichment, just the way we vary our diet, right? All of the different ways that we can decide to change different things. Nobody wants to eat the same predictable thing every single day, right? As far as humans go. An enrichment activity for myself is getting my nails done or having my nails painted or even having nails, right? Getting the opportunity to have some agency over my physical appearance. I enjoy watching TV a lot, but I don't enjoy watching documentaries about machinery. I much prefer to watch a documentary about animals, right? I don't enjoy watching a lot of drama. So somebody might go, I have an enrichment activity for you. You're going to watch The Real Housewives of whatever new city. I would probably rather pull my hair out. So just because you decide it's an enrichment activity doesn't mean that I will decide it's an enrichment activity. So when we're talking about these enrichment activities, remember that each animal has their own individual preference, and it's important that we provide them some agency to consent to the interaction and to remove themselves from the interaction when we're trying new things, okay? So nutritional enrichment might be the just different ways we provide their diet. So for instance, we get, instead of the same exact flavor of canned food that we're giving our animals, or even just giving them canned food and kibble, right? Giving them different variations to that. Maybe they don't get canned food at every meal. Maybe they get canned food sometimes. Maybe we provide that canned food in a specific way. So the little pink circle thing that's hard to tell what that is, that's called a lick mat. And so it is a piece of silicone basically that has different ridges and ribs to it. So it provides different textures. So if I've got a cat that's over grooming, I probably have a cat that needs something like a lick mat, or let's see if my video wants to play. This is a cat in shelter that we found really enjoyed Kongs. And so the cat Kongs are nice and small. I believe that is technically a puppy Kong because it is the pastel colors are their puppy levels. But all we did was put a couple of pieces of cat treats down in the bottom and maybe a teaspoon of canned food. I didn't provide a frozen Kong for a cat because I was just rapidly making a few. But if you've got a cat that gets kind of bored, maybe before you leave for work a couple of days a week, you put out a Kong. And if they're not interacting with the Kong, then it wasn't interesting for them. So when we're talking about diet variation, we're not just talking about what we're feeding, we're talking about how we feed it, right? Maybe it's that I've got these funky little freeze-dried treats, freeze-dried shrimp that literally look like, salad-sized shrimp, and they're freeze-dried, versus freeze-dried minnow, which I find cats and dogs sometimes either really like, or they like it so much they don't want to ingest it. They just want to rub stinky dried fish all over them instead. Or they want to hide it for later. And those kinds of caching behaviors just mean that it's like, oh my gosh, this is the most, you gave me a gold bar and I can't spend it. I have to go hide it. They're also in the little jar down at the bottom is Churu. Churu is a brand, but these are lickable cat treats. There's a number of different lickable cat treats. For dogs, we tend to use baby food or watered down canned food. You can use that for cats as well, only when safe and appropriate ingredients are involved. and then a puzzle bowl. So this bowl that is the 3 layers, the top layer rotates, the middle layer rotates, and the bottom stays stationary. So they really have to move those things around. If you've got a cat that's really interactive, doing something like that might be fun. The green ball is you open it, scoop their meal in, close it, and they roll it around and the kibbles fall out. Again, this is not for every cat, but this might be a fun way to provide some varied diets. The puzzles that can be harder, like the one on the top right, where it's not only is it you have to move the pieces, it's a closed piece and this piece goes in. If you don't have a cat that's real resilient and tenacious, they're going to look at that and go, why? Why would I work that hard? So you don't necessarily want to start with something like a puzzle. If you've got a cat that isn't willing to engage in sprinkled food on the ground, or the ball that they roll and the food just falls out, you may not want to audition, let me get a puzzle, right? Sometimes we get these things because we're like, it's cute and it's seasonal and oh my gosh. With dogs, we use snuffle mats. There's a lot of cats that really like snuffle mats, but you may have a cat that prefers lower effort enrichment. So they may prefer a snuffle mat that is like silicone fake grass versus a shag carpet that has all kinds of stuff in there. If you've got a cat that tends to try to eat fabric and things like that, again, silicone versus the or the rubber version versus the fabric version, you may be looking at different things. Providing your cat with cat safe plants and making sure that if you've got a cat that's trying to eat greenery, make sure that they can't have access to the dangerous plants and greenery that might be in your home. And maybe they have specific access to something. And maybe it sits in their favorite windowsill versus having it down out of the light and over by their food tray, right? So look at what is your cat, whenever you're looking at enrichment, I want you to pay close attention to what naughty behaviors are your animal doing? What trouble are they getting into? Are they counter surfing? Because if they're counter surfing, they're foraging. Are they trying to get into your trash can? Because they're foraging, right? They're looking for things. So if you've got a cat that tends to forage and scavenge and get themselves into trouble, you walk by your kitchen sink and not only are they in the kitchen sink, but they're licking your plates. Great. That sounds like a cat that could use a lick mat, right? So looking at what trouble is my cat getting into? And then deciding about what kind of enrichment we might want to offer based upon that. Okay. So really getting to know your specific animal. And then you might try a couple of things. Don't buy the most expensive thing on the market. Get something that you think your cat might actually be interested in, something that you can build the difficulty, right? So with the slow feeder ball that they kind of roll around, I think that one's called a Slim Cat. I think that's the brand of it. You might start with really small kibbles so that it falls out really easily. For some animals that are worried about touching the ball that moves, I'll put little bits of maybe the Churu, the lickable, or a little bit of canned food on it, and they'll go to lick it. And as they go to lick it with that high value item on it, they'll move the ball and then things will fall out. And then they go, oh, I didn't realize it, right? So sometimes you need to help your animal get started. Sometimes the lick mat is something as simple as a little bit of tuna broth that you were going to give anyways because you were making tuna and you were going to just give them a bowl of the tuna broth. Now that is enriching all by itself, but you could also in the summertime, you could make a couple of little ice trays with diluted chicken broth or diluted tuna broth or something like that. Or you could put it on a lick mat and put the lick mat in the freezer and give it to them. But you've got to know your cat, right? If your cat is not interested in something that's going to take them a whole lot of effort or interested in something that is going to be cold and has a different sensation to it, they might like the tuna broth just fine when it's lukewarm or warm. They may not want frozen, right? So just because you tried it one way doesn't mean nix, my cat never likes it, but it might mean let's try something different. All right, so social enrichment we're going to start with first. So social enrichment being things like interacting with people. Now, that is only enriching to a cat that enjoys interacting with people. And it might be about playing together. It might be just about hanging out in the same space. Maybe you have a cat that likes to just be near you. So you're sitting reading and they're hanging out by your feet. That might be enriching enough for them. And this is where cats do enjoy having humans around often. Interacting with other animals or other cats can be considered social enrichment, but we want to make sure that these are healthy and safe and consensual interactions. So the photo on the top right, a friend of mine had a foster puppy who was about 1.5 pounds 2 pounds, and it is really hard to find other foster puppies in her size range. But it just so happened that there was a singleton foster kitten that needed a buddy. And so pairing those two together was actually quite helpful for both of them because they were in the same weight category. They were on similar feeding schedules. They were obviously eating and drinking different things, but social interaction can look something like that. So rather than no interaction at all, it might be, hey, let's have these interactions. There is a cat and dog pair in the middle. Those are buddies of mine, Rocco the Frenchie and Steph the cat. And they have a really cool relationship. They will often play. And luckily they are similar in size, and they kind of grew up together with the cat being the established member of the household as the dog came in. So for them, they have quite a few social interactions throughout the day without necessarily playing as much with the people. Steph plays quite a bit with the dog, and he actually will initiate things. He will initiate chasing up and down the stairs. He will initiate pawing at him when he has a toy, and they will both initiate back and forth together. So there's a lot of communication there. Looking at physical enrichment is going to be things like physical activity, right? So exercise and play obviously fit into that category. Some of our cats are going to need sort of a scheduled play, right? If I've got a cat who routinely in the evenings or overnight does not let me sleep, I may need to really be mindful of how I schedule that play throughout the day. And maybe we don't end the evening on really exciting, arousing play. Maybe we make sure that there's more active play during the day, and then the evening is something like a puzzle toy with food that is maybe helps my cat relax, rather than let's bring out the catnip, let's bring out the cat toys and the wand and get them as active as possible. Sometimes we need to find a balance between the two. Pearl, the kitty in the middle photo with the wand toy, was a cat who needed a lot of physical exercise, being a young adolescent teenager in the shelter. But she also was a cat that was very sensitive to stimulation. So we needed to find a balance between how active and how exciting she got herself to make sure that she didn't get herself overstimulated and start with the biting. And then there's also nothing wrong with making sure that they get quite a bit of independent exercise. So something we would often do with Pearl is we would play with that wand toy. And when she caught the wand toy, she really liked to grab it and take her prey, we called it. She would take her prize and go lay down somewhere with it. So similar to how you can play fetch over and over and over with an animal, but if they're not bringing it back and they walk away with it, they want to break. They don't necessarily want to break from the toy, but they want to break from that routine. So something that we would do often with Pearl is we would play until she took her prize and went away from us. And until she came back to seek interaction, we did not then go pick up that toy, right? So there are plenty of cats who will play things like fetch with you. They will bring you hair ties. They will bring you bottle caps. Hair ties can be really dangerous, so I don't recommend small hair ties that they can ingest, or rubber bands and things like that. Make sure everything is safe for your cat to interact with. If they're playing with something that could potentially be dangerous, you always want to swap them out. So you're not necessarily going, hey, stop that, you can't play, but we might want to swap things out. Okay, so independent exercise being allowing your cat to tear around the house and run up and down their cat tree. I really like this blanket storage unit that a friend of mine has, which is essentially a shelf. I mean, it could be for bookcases or whatever, but she's chosen to use it to store her blankets, which means it becomes an extra cat tree for her cats, right? So they can get up it nice and easily. It's easy for her to clean. It looks aesthetic. So it doesn't look like, oh, I have cat trees all over my house, right? So being able to provide your cat enrichment without having to have your entire house look like it's just for cats. Okay, physical enrichment can be something as simple as a cat tree, as simple as having something that they can get up and get vertical with, because we know cats don't spend all of their time on the ground, right? It is normal for them to be able to get up and get into vertical spaces. So we want to make sure that we're providing that for our cats. If we're not providing that for our cats, they're going to create it on their own. And that might mean that they decide to sit on the top of your bookcase next to your glass, whatever, art you have sitting around, and they are going to bump into things and they are going to touch things. And if it's scary or dangerous, or they get in trouble, which makes it a scary activity, that is not necessarily going to be able to meet their needs then. All right, this is quite small, but I wanted to put a piece of this infographic. You can find this infographic on the Chirps and Chatter web page. This is talking about how to react when we're getting play aggression. So with cats, we just talked about getting physically active with our cats. So if we just take a look at the don't section real quick, right? We don't have to break down the how do we do it, but let's break down the let's not do it. If my cat is playing with a toy and then begins to start coming at me or begins to start biting and escalating up my body as they are getting more aroused and overstimulated and they're just little piranhas, if we're jerking away and pulling away, we're keeping the game alive, right? Same as if we're using a wand toy. In order to keep my cat's interest, I keep it moving. So if I all of a sudden become the toy by jerking and stopping, that's not necessarily going to stop the escalation that's happening there. If we're yelling, spraying, hitting, getting really scary with our cat, we're often going to get a cat that went, oh, I'm overstimulated, and is going, well, now I have to hurt you because you're scary and you're a threat. Or a cat that goes, I don't want to interact with you and you're no fun to play with because you're scary. I don't like interacting with you because you, to that cat, are probably going to get unpredictably scary. And then we're adding in punishment, which is going to damage the relationship between us and the cat. So we're either damaging our relationship or causing our cat to get aggressive in response to us because now they need to be defensive to get away from us. Having a big old reaction isn't not necessarily something that is going to be helpful in the situation. Again, our cat is just going to go, well, now I have to get away from you because you're scary. Putting that into timeout is something that is quite difficult to accomplish safely. Often that means picking them up, moving them out of the space, and that can be something that can be really not enjoyable for your cat because now I'm grabbing you. I'm usually agitated or emotional when I'm doing that, when I could just as easily call you out of the space, redirect you out of the space, end the play session before we get to that section or get to that level. And then again, reacting in anger, that is a punishment technique. We're just getting scary to our cat. So instead, doing things like stopping the play sooner than later. So instead of waiting until my cat gets to the point where they're jumping from the toy to my hand, I can go, oh, your pupils are getting real big. Oh, maybe you need a break. Redirecting them back to a toy or getting something that is a wand toy rather than my hands. Really, really, really highly recommend if you're going to wrestle with a cat or get them excited, remember that you're encouraging their mouth on your hand, on your body. So a wand toy, a toy that is, feathers at the end of it, something that gets that cat's mouth away from my body. I don't want to encourage the cat to go after things like my clothes. And that also means being mindful about not walking around the house. I don't think many of us are doing this, but if you're walking around the house in fringe pants or something that moves and flows as you're moving, a real nice long sweater that flows behind you like a cape, that looks like a wand toy. That looks like a cat's toy. So just taking that sweater off and setting it down, we're going to have a whole lot less problems than our cat coming out. And then again, independent toys. It doesn't have to be attached to you. It can be a little remote control, little robot that we go. Myself and a lot of folks don't often recommend doing things like laser toys where the cat is not allowed to catch the thing, right? If the prey is just constantly evading, we're actually developing more frustration than necessarily giving them a healthy outlet. So instead of a wand toy that I can do for my couch, instead of a laser toy that I can do from sitting on my couch, get a wand toy that you can do from sitting on the couch, or a remote that is a little, mouse that you can, move around and let the cat catch it. Let them have that. I see it, I stalk it, I chase it, I grab it, it's mine. Let them have that fulfillment because that is going to be a whole lot less frustrating, and frustration builds into aggression with every species. So we want to be mindful of that. All right. Sensory enrichment and cognitive enrichment. Both of these things I think are activities that we tend to really enjoy interacting with our cats. So sensory enrichment, meaning activating those senses. What's it taste like? How does the touch feel? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? So putting things like scratch posts of different varieties. You know, sisal rope versus something that is more like a cardboard that has a different set, that has a different feel to it when they're moving on it. Is it a brush hanging from their, or strapped to maybe the pole on their cat tree? And it can just literally just be a soft scrub brush that they can practice rubbing their body on, that the sensory, ooh, that feels nice, I'm scratching myself, right? Those kinds of things might be really enjoyable. Different plants, we talked about those earlier. Those might be really enjoyable. Putting on different radio sounds or an audiobook when you're gone, or even soundscapes like playing, you know, bird sounds, different things like that, just to switch it up for them so it's not boring. If you're noticing a cat that likes to hang out in the window and watch the world go by, maybe they would like to, you know, listen to sounds. Maybe they want to have a pretend fish tank on the TV. You can try different things like that. You can also do a lot of different scent type things. So scents like silvervine powder or catnip are, you know, very common, but also you can throw things off. We tend to do training scents, are things that are made mostly for hunting dogs. But you can definitely try a new scent. So if you've got a cat that you're, especially if you've got a medical foster or a cat that really has to be sort of in quarantine, if you will, or a cat that's in shelter that doesn't have a lot of access to new scents. Sometimes you're doing something as simple as, I used to have the volunteers collect some leaves from outside, put them in a plastic container, like a Ziploc container, and just poke some holes in the lid, not big enough for the cat to get in or bite onto, and just put it near their enclosure, or bring it into the room and let them sniff it and get all that information, but not just bringing leaves into the space. We don't want to bring anything yucky and dirty, and, you know, we don't want to bring parasites in from outside. So interactive toys that mimic prey, we've already talked about those. Feather wand toys, remote toys, or things are going to be recommended everywhere. You probably already have a few. You could also do things like, instead of the silvervine powder, getting the silvervine sticks, which are similar to sort of how we like to provide bunny rabbits with sticks and things that they can chew on and gnaw on, especially for young cats and adolescent cats that are biting on things and chewing on things. Like a teething puppy, we want to give them something that they can practice chomping on that is a healthy thing. Some of the silvervine sticks come with a little acorn size extra piece. You can cut those things off. Something that if you're worried about your cat ingesting a portion of a toy, cut it off. Don't have them around the cat when you are not supervising. But the silvervine sticks can be quite nice when they're full size. Once they get down a little bit, if your cat is breaking them, get rid of them. That's not a safe thing for your cat to have. Typically, they'll just sort of gnaw on them for a little bit. They might bat them around. Again, it depends on what your cat prefers. The different scents, you can do things like a little rabbit scent. There's like duck and pheasant and all those, you know, popularly hunted wildlife scents. And you're not going to want to like spray it all over the place. Remember, they can smell really, really good. You might put a drop on a rag and put it in the room with them for 20 or 30 minutes for them to sniff, but you don't want to douse the whole place in it. You might do things like a really, really diluted lavender spray on a rag, just so there's a new scent in the space. We don't like to do strong scents, and we don't like to do scents that they can't get away from. Now, differently would be things like the feel away or the pheromone type things. So if you've got, I like to use the pheromone spray in a new area when I'm bringing a new animal home. And I tend to use it for maybe 72 hours and then I stop using it. For some cats, the pheromone spray is going to be or the pheromone diffuser is going to be very helpful for them. For some cats, it's going to be equivalent to taking a lavender bath and drinking chamomile tea. Like, it's not going to make anything worse, but it may not really relieve their stress. Okay. But sometimes it is helpful to have something like that. Now, another thing about soundscapes and sensory enrichment, like sounds and things, is if you've got a cat that is new to your home and fearful, or is just fearful of, maybe there's construction happening down the street, so there's lots of unpredictable loud noises happening, you may want to leave a white noise machine or something on to help dampen all of the noise of the chaos happening outside of your personal space, as a way to help them adjust and deal with the stress of what's happening. So enrichment can have a sort of behavior modification component or can assist in other potential issues by just trying to change up new things. And then cognitive enrichment is going to be things like food puzzles, training, foraging and scavenging can be, it's again, a lot of these enrichment tactics are going to hit multiple points. So you're going to get things that are food puzzles that are engaging my cat, they're foraging and scavenging, but also my cat has to think about where does this move and how does this move? And again, every cat's going to be a little bit different. There is a little stick with a sort of a ball on the end. It looks like an antenna topper. And this stick is a telescoping stick. It's called a target stick. And it's something that we often use to teach animals to target. So target a portion of their body, make contact with it. If you've ever seen a dolphin or a whale show, the orange ball hanging out over the water, that is a target. So go and touch that thing. Now, using a target stick can be great for an animal that doesn't want to make physical contact with you. So I often would use these in shelter. I would also often take a spoon and attach it to a wooden dowel so I could feed that cat at a distance without throwing the treat to scare them, but it would allow me to go, I see that you saw me, here's a treat. I see that you saw me, here's a treat. And I would make sure to bring in something high value, again, like those lickable treats, something that's real fast and easy for them to get, just a couple little licks, and then they move on. But that is training. So even though they're fearful, doesn't mean that they can't do training. All right, environmental enrichment. This is the most obvious, easy one. Vertical spaces like cat trees, climbing posts, perches and shelves and ramps. There's some really cool ways that you can do this. If you have a multi-species household like dogs and cats, I recommend having a lot of easily accessible vertical spaces. Even if you've got a cat that is comfortable being down low on the ground with everybody else, or if you've got a new baby in the house or young children in the house, we want our cats to be able to get up and out of the way easily. Making sure they have lots of hiding spots. So tunnels, boxes, beds, those kinds of things. The picture on the top is a cat on something called a crinkle blanket. So yes, this is environmental enrichment, but it's also sensory. So the crinkle blanket makes that crinkling sound and the cat can move around and squish it up as much as they want to. Changing where the scratching surfaces are or changing what they are. Maybe you take the scratcher from the downstairs and put it upstairs and the one from upstairs and put it downstairs. Some scratchers hang on the wall. Some scratchers maybe you put on the edge of the couch, the furniture that tends to be something that gets scratched on. There are ways to deter your cat from scratching on things that do not involve punishment. So you don't have to have something that is unfortunately popular is things like a scat mat. So the cat, it's a mat that goes across and when the cat jumps on, it gives a vibration or a little shock. And so the cat's not getting on the couch because the couch is a scary, painful place. That is not necessarily what we need to do. We can also just create more accessible, enjoyable places for the cat to hang out if that's what you want, right? If you don't want the cat to hang out on the throw blankets on the couch, then maybe the throw blankets need to go somewhere else. And I understand that may mess up the magazine-like view of your living room, but maybe those throw blankets are out when you're not home and away when you're not home and out when you are entertaining, because when you're entertaining, your cat is probably gone, right? Disappeared somewhere else. So you're not going to have that same challenge. And then different viewpoints in the house. So having those windows or shelves, maybe opening the blinds, closing the blinds, those kinds of things can be really helpful. For some cats, high arousal, high frustration cats, you may not want them to have access to look outside the window and stare at stare at the birds in the tree that are coming and going. Because maybe that causes your cat to stress pace and stress out rather than, oh, this is nice and peaceful and I like to watch the world go by. Similar to how, and again, my specialty is dogs. So similar to how a dog rests by the front window, but might also be remaining vigilant because they're constantly watching for things to go by. But you're going, well, most of the time they're just resting there, right? But they're not sleeping. They're just positioned, right? So if your cat is, positioned somewhere watching the world go by and is highly aroused and highly frustrated and pulling at blinds and things like that, we may want to cover those windows a little bit better. If there's a particularly nice sunspot, you may want to hang the bottom left. I found this really cool multi-layered shelf. So multiple cats can be up there and they have like this particular one, they put a little bit of cat grass at the top. So you've got the cat grass, which is going to enjoy the sun, and then your cats that might enjoy the sun. And then having access to safe outdoor interactions can be nice. So there's catios that are basically just a window box that attaches to a window. And then you also have things that look almost similar to a chicken coop or an aviary. I have a client who came up with a very cool option that was originally for her dog, and I like to share it because it became something that was great for the cat. So off of an unused sort of sunroom, they have a regular dog run, a kennel, if you will, when you get it Tractor Supply. And it's just 3 panels of the 6x6 fencing, and it's attached up to the side of the house, and they have a awning over the top. So all they really needed to do was get mesh and go from the top of the dog kennel up to the roof. And then they added in some healthy vegetation in there. And there's 2 little AstroTurf piles or 2 little AstroTurf mats. And they put a chair out there. So in the morning, she goes out there, the cat and the dog go out and enjoy coffee with her. And the dog has his little potty area. And they ended up putting a cat door in their sliding screen so that the cat can go in and out without having to be supervised. So they were able to create something that's not even in their main backyard. It's on a side yard that really only houses the trash cans, but it's a nice relaxing space for their cat to have access outside, because they live in hills where there are potential dangers for that cat, not only cars, but also wildlife and things like that. So this way the cat is not causing chaos on the wildlife, because remember, cats are an invasive species, but they are also not putting the cat at potential risk. And that's something that they only do during the portion of the day where there's the sun access to that side of the yard. Otherwise, it's pretty much closed up, and the cat is a whole lot less frustrated about getting out. And also they've dealt with a significant decrease in the cat trying to get out through doors. So before that was a problem, they'd go to take the dog out and the cat's trying to get out behind them. And this way they're a whole lot less stressed about that. All right, so there are ways to do safe outside time. So a lot of people like the cat backpacks. There's another version of a kitty patio, essentially version of a dog kennel outside with the different panels. And the cool thing about those panels is you can attach stuff all over the place. So they're great if you've got an animal that we need some outside time. I have a similar one for a large lizard that I have. But the strollers can be great if your cat enjoys these things. So remember, if your cat enjoys these things, if you're putting your cat in a cat stroller and it doesn't want to get in the cat stroller and it is stressed while it's in the cat stroller, then this is not enrichment for your cat. Okay. We want it to be enrichment, not punishment. Okay. We want them to enjoy it. If your cat's not jumping in the stroller and the backpack on their own, they're not enjoying it. Okay. So we don't want to have to grab them, pin them, and shove them into things. We want them going in on their own. If you're going to be taking your cat out for adventures, I highly, 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 highly recommend that your cat is wearing some sort of tracker. And there are a whole bunch of things. They need to be wearing their tags. They need to have a microchip. They should be wearing a tracker. So there are quite a few tracker brands that are making smaller items. A lot of people are using AirTags. Tile has a version. Cube has a version. Samsung has a version. So whatever technology OS you like, there's probably a version for that. And there are cat-sized ones available. Additionally, we want to make sure that not just that your cat has their tag on, also if they're going to be outside, please make sure that they have a auto release collar that is going to pop off so they don't get stuck on something. But that being said, if they have an auto release collar, they can't be leashed to their collar, right? So we need to make sure that they're in some version of a safe harness when they're out. We need to teach them how to wear this gear inside the house, because again, if my dog goes catatonic or my cat goes catatonic and flops over and I can't walk while they're wearing their harness, that is not the right state of mind to then take my cat outside. Oh, do you feel insecure? Great, let's go somewhere new. No, we need to really take our time to make sure that our cat feels nice and comfortable. Maybe we start with just putting it on and taking it off. Maybe we start with putting it on and giving them a rub down. Maybe we put it on and they get a lick mat. Maybe put it on and they walk around and we play with our cat toys so that they have the opportunity to move around and get some exercise with just the harness on. Then we put the leash on. But if putting the leash on means that my cat is dragging something that's now spooky, we need to, again, work them through it. The harnesses is not for every cat. The stroller is not for every cat. The backpack is not for every cat. Just like not all of us enjoy going to every single social function. Some of us are not ravers. Some of us do not like loud outdoor music spaces. Some of us do not like networking events where there's a high social expectation. So You really want to be doing what is going to set your cat up for success. Again, it is not enrichment if my dog is showing high signs, or my cat is showing high signs of stress. Sorry, I'm so used to saying dog, but a lot of this applies to both. So when you're going to harness your cat, you do need to try it on in the house. You need to make sure that it is easy to get on your cat, because we want to make sure that it's not stressful to get on the cat. And then we also want to make sure that it fits your cat really nice and secure. You also want to make sure some of them do tighten as they pull, so that it's similar to a martingale collar where they can't pull out of it. But we also want to make sure that if it pulls tight, that it doesn't stay tight. It needs to release that so that it's not on there. Again, if your cat is going to be outside, we need to take all of our safety measures to keep them safe. One of those things is to have a cat bell on them. The cat bell is going to tell you where they are audibly, because remember, the cat is not going to tell you when they're hunkered down. But the other main reason that your cat should be wearing a bell if they're getting any outside time is we need to remember the stealthiest of cats is when they're hunting. We need a jingle jangle to give everything that lives out there an opportunity to get away from our cats. And again, it is important to remember that cats are an invasive species, and we want to be very ethical and mindful about the fact that they are out there going after small little reptiles, snakes, mice, rats, whatever they can find. If you do not enjoy your cat bringing you special projects that they created and found for you outside, keep your cat inside. And if that's how your cat is enriching themselves, then I have a lot of ideas for you. You've just seen quite a few of them. Okay. All right. So this is a a video of me training with a cat in a shelter. This cat is not using a target stick. He is using my finger. So you'll hear the clicker, and that clicker is telling him, good job, look at this over here. Good job, look at this over here. Okay. So I'm using all of the information I just gave you about enrichment, something for you to find here. So instead of trying to pick this cat up, we taught this cat to get up. Okay, this is also a cat that was working to lower his weight while in shelter. So we went, great, let's get some physical enrichment. So we're doing training, he's getting physical enrichment, he's getting treats. And so we're giving him lots of opportunities to do multiple things during this short and sweet interaction. Additionally, we're creating a reason for him to want to approach and interact with people. Okay, this doesn't need to be very long. He's just following my finger. Now, if I've got a cat that goes places that he's not supposed to go, telling him or having the ability to tell him, go this way, go that way, can be really useful. So these target behaviors also become a way to redirect the cat. All right. This is a fun video of Pearl. You will notice that Pearl is going to get overstimulated multiple times during this session. We have worked on creating what we call an interrupter cue, and you'll hear me sort of kiss at her. And that is her cue for look at me. And so if she's starting to bite on me, I need her to stop and look at me. So that is something you will hear me redirect her to do a couple of times during this video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. She's also a cat that wants not just mild petting, but you can see her pressing. So this is a cat that goes, that's not enough, that's not enough, that's not enough. So she's a sensory seeker, if you will. And she will actually, she's petting herself, getting herself overstimulated. And then she goes, oh, sorry. So we had to come up with a communication system for her that said, if you want more, this is what you need to do. So you can see I stop and I went, are you sure? She goes, yes, keep petting me. But she's having trouble managing, right? So this is where we're going to interrupt, and we're going to go really minimal with the petting, because the more she's petting, the more stressed and frustrated she's getting.
You know that this is case study video, and so you're asking a poll.
So as she's rubbing, I was telling her she's a case study, because she was a cat that that took quite a bit of figuring out in shelter, because it's really hard to deny a cat that is sensory seeking like that attention without then causing them frustration. But you can see, even when I just went, here's my hand, pet yourself, she would get herself over aroused to the point that she would start biting. So this was typical when we did an initial entrance for her into her condo. Was let's do some treats on the ground. Then she would start to rub all over us and we would get the toy so we could get some energy out. Then once she was done playing, we would sit and we would wait for her to come over to us and engage with us. There were times that she was on the receiving end of a cat appropriate timeout. And by that, I mean, the cat is not removed, the human goes away. Okay. So if the cat can't manage themselves, we're going to just go ahead and move away in those scenarios. These guys were very conflicted. So these were kittens that were trapped outside. You'll see one that is rubbing against me. And you will also see him move away if I make any movements towards him. So while he is approaching me, he is not asking for physical contact. You can see how his back legs are sort of stretched out, and you'll see his arched spine, and he went, oh, I got too close, and he moved away. So we've got multiple food options here, and they each have a crate, and there's also enrichment in the crate. So you'll see that I believe Charlie is in the crate right now. So they have access to objects. They have multiple sources for enrichment. He can approach me if he wants to, but he does not actually want to engage with me. He just wants to sniff me and check me out. It's really hard as the human to not stick your hands out there and interact with the cat. But there is a lot of times where we assume with all species that if you approach, it means that you want to be touched. And so allowing the cats to really have some agency over what we do with their bodies can be really, really helpful when trying to build relationships and bonds. These two cats went from hiding to seeking interaction. And so they went from, I don't know if you're ready for adoption, to I think you could be adopted. And one of the things that we really started to work with cats on was that we often would send a cat home in a carrier. And sometimes we would use the adopter's carrier. Most of the time the adopter would bring a carrier, or we had the cardboard carriers. And what we decided to do was for the cats that would hide or get aggressive with us when we tried to get them, we started saying, okay, we're going to designate a carrier for this cat. So the cat would have the same carrier. They would get all their meals in the carrier, and we would start doing, we entered the room, we would toss some treats into the carriers and go in. So we practiced sending them into the carriers and closing the carriers. This was because we would spend a lot of time relationship building, and then it was time for that cat to go home, and we would completely ruin the relationship by forcing them into a box or a carrier when it was time to leave. Making sure that these cats not only had a safe access, that they understood when we came into their condo to clean, the cats couldn't go anywhere. So this way we went, I'm in your condo, go in your kennel, close the kennels, clean the condo. When it was time to leave, we would open the kennels, and then we would leave. The adopters were warned, they had waivers. Hey, this is a fearful cat. Please take home this crate. And if you can, down the line, bring it back or donate another. And sometimes what we would do is someone would walk in with a carrier for their cat, and we'd go, hey, your cat has a carrier that already smells like them, that they're familiar with. And they would go, okay, here's my carrier. And then we would just basically do a carrier trade. But for those of us that deal with foster cats or cats that are moving around, I find it's a whole lot better to just go, let's keep something consistent with the cat as they move into a new situation. And this is another video of the same kitty cat. So we'll just watch a little session. This is a few weeks later. You can see how much more interactive they are with me, how much closer I'm able to be. And we're just doing similar. Door closes. The food doesn't stop. You get some more. I'm not using a clicker for this session because it's really hard to click two animals at the same time for doing two different things. So we're just doing food. And then I'm also providing food outside of the space so they can get both. Again, one of those cats, the one rubbing on me, is very comfortable in my personal space. The other cat is not. So he's rubbing on me, but if I go to pet him, he'll usually swat at me. And again, rubbing, but he has opportunities. He has access to go do other things. We want to make sure that we're not just immediately closing the crate, because then they're not going to want to go back in. It's I touch the door, no big deal. I close the door, no big deal. we have one large enough so that if the boys, these are brothers, if they choose to run into the same carrier when the cleaning is happening, that's fine. If you'd rather cower together, that's fine. Or you can each have your own. So we gave them lots of options. All right, and then real quickie video, because I think this is awesome. Most people don't realize that cats are really good at nose work, and there are some fantastic online classes you can take with your cat. So if you're looking for something to do with your cat, this can be really fun. This person's just got a bunch of bins from the dollar store and set them up in different areas, and there is stuff hidden in the space. Now you can just hide food. You don't have to hide anything else. But you can also start to hide a certain scent and teach your cat to find a certain scent. But this cat is just spending a little time going around, found the item that took that cat 30 seconds, right? So it's not hard to set up. You got kids in the house that want to interact with the cat. This is a great independent exercise for the cat that does not involve any handling. So it can be a fun way to interact with them. So real quick, animals learn through associations and consequences. So association is pairing things together. This means that. This sound means this is happening. The crinkling of the bag means that there's snacks happening or someone's having snacks somewhere. The sound of the door opening means something, right? So they're going to learn through those associations. And then they also learn through consequence. And consequence just means what happens after. So if I enjoy what happens after I do the thing, I'm more likely to do it. If I don't enjoy, I'm less likely to do it. Okay. So when we're talking about reinforcement, anytime we say reinforcement, we mean the behavior is more likely to happen. Anytime we mean punishment, we mean the behavior is less likely to happen. This quadrant isn't something you really need to learn a whole lot about. For most of our training, it's going to be giving the animal something they enjoy and removing something that they don't. So removing something scary, like opening that kennel for me to allow Ray to come running out, that was negative reinforcement, right? I reinforced him by saying, hey, I got you. You can come on out. We don't want to be doing positive punishment whenever possible. That is the addition of scary things. So we don't need to spray our cats from a distance. We don't need to go out, right? We can just, hey, come on over here, right? We don't need to be intimidating and scary and stress our cats out. All right, so ways that we train new things. We can use a marker signal like a clicker, but you can also just go with your mouth. You can say, yes, good, nice, whatever you want it to be. It does not have to be a clicker. If you have a dog at home that is clicker trained, you may not want to clicker train your cat because that dog might be real frustrated about the fact that someone else is training. Sometimes just snap or yes, anything like that is just fine. Luring means we take the food and we move their body with it. Marking means we mark the moment that they do the thing. And then, so that would be, we would be doing capturing when we are waiting for our cat to do a thing we like and then marking that moment and rewarding. And then shaping is going to be rewarding approximations towards a goal. That's where things get a little bit more complicated. If you want some great videos on how to start the clicker training with your cat, I really like this YouTube channel, Cat University, I believe is what it's called.
Hi, we are Julian Jones.
So that one's on there for later. You can watch it. All right, so common cat struggles. These are going to be things that we've already talked about. We're not going to dig into a whole bunch of them because we've already talked about most of them. How do we manage transportation issues? Well, the crate can be a great option. How do we manage interspecies interactions? Well, we can do a lot more barriers, a lot more access for them to hide away from things. We also can, there's a whole process for how do we introduce cats? How do we introduce dogs? All of those things, I'm not going to dig into the details of it. But we did talk about potty box issues and we talked a little bit about redirecting things. Most of the common issues we're going to be dealing with is a lack of enrichment. So our cat doesn't have enough access to enrichment activities to keep them out of trouble. And poor antecedent arrangement. This is things like not setting up the cat for success. So sometimes the simplest part is let's make sure the cat has one bedroom as they're adjusting to the space, and then we give them more, and then we give them more. Sometimes it's as simple as don't leave the turkey out on the counter. Make sure that the cat doesn't have access to it. And then the lack of alternative skills. So having the cat come when called, having the cat go to a specific space when called can be really helpful. Having the cat follow your target finger so you can ask them to go do something, that can be really helpful. Even just as simple as the way that we taught Pearl the kissy sound meant you're biting too hard, stop that. And then these are some great resources. So some of these resources I used in the videos today. Some of them you can find in other places. When you get the link to the recording and the YouTube playlist, you'll also get, I'll throw some of these on there. So Cat School, sorry, not Cat University, is one of those YouTube channels that is really, really good. Jackson Galaxy is known everywhere. Everybody knows him. Tabitha Kucera of Chirrups and Chatter, she's wonderful. The Community Cats podcast is a great resource for anybody that deals with community cats. Fear-Free Happy Homes, Fear-Free Shelters, we talked about those. Rachel Geller is a cat behaviorist, and Michael Delgado is a cat behaviorist. So looking at people who are certified in this is harder to do because there are less certifications out there for cat and feline behavior, but they are available. Michael Delgado is one part of the Feline Minds company, and they also do consulting and things like that. And I believe Rachel Geller also does consulting. If you're dealing with a lot of complicated challenges or multiple complicated challenges or high stress and high aggression in your cats, especially anything that seems unpredictable, I do highly recommend working with a veterinary behaviorist. So that is a veterinarian who specializes in behavior. And they are the kinds of folks that you really want to get started with. And you're probably going to work in coordination with somebody who does feline behavior, cat behavior. Another resource I forgot to put on here that I will put in your resources for later is Pet Harmony. Pet Harmony is a wonderful organization. They have a great book on enrichment, really digging into what enrichment looks like. And remember, enrichment just means giving your cat access to be their true selves and do the things that they really enjoy. And so while this is a body language and a behaviors discussion, enrichment took up the majority of that discussion because it is so important that we're making sure that their enrichment needs get met. So I've kept you guys over a little bit. I want to call it a night. I want to respect your time. I appreciate you guys for spending the eve of Thanksgiving with us. And for those who end up watching the recording, we appreciate you spending the 90 minutes with us talking cats. And we are done for the night. I hope you guys all enjoy your evening and your family time. And I'm going to